Hey everybody, it is Thursday and I felt compelled to pop into your news feeds today and just say a couple of things. So it's becoming a weird aspect of this that I'm becoming comfortable with just hitting the live button and starting to talk to you, but there's things about it I like. I woke up this morning to the news that I'm sure so many of you did, that the governor made the decision to cancel school in person for the rest of the year, to continue online learning for the rest of the year. And it's certainly an announcement that I think we were all anticipating. I think we saw it coming, but just like so much of this whole experience, like the knowing that it's coming and the reality of having it happen are just two different things. And I think actually getting the information is just a hard thing to deal with. And so I don't know, I have a couple of thoughts. I could have written them down, but I just wanted to talk to you today. So the first thing that I just want to say is that there's a lot of grief wrapped up in this. For so many of us, especially involved in the camp community. I mean, if you're in an active family in the camp community, it's probably because you have kids who are school age, and many of you are teachers yourselves. And I think it's incredibly hard to know in only April that if we have school again the way we're used to having it, it's not going to be until September. And so I just think there's a lot of sadness in this. And I just want to say that I think it's totally okay to be really sad and to have a lot of grief about this. Nobody likes feeling sad. And so I think that we are inclined sometimes to just try to make the sadness go away, or to give ourselves a pep talk, like, well, it could be worse, or we are strong, we can do this. But I'm not sure if that serves us. I think the best thing we can possibly do is just acknowledge that this is something that we can be really sad about, and go ahead and feel those feelings. I also want you to remember, if you have not watched yet if you have not listened to all of Brene Brown's podcasts yet, I encourage you to do so as soon as you can. But one of her podcasts from a few weeks ago, she was talking about grief, and she said, you don't serve yourself or anyone else by comparing your suffering or grief to someone else's, right? That like by saying, well, I'm sad, but it could be worse because at least I'm healthy, or at least I don't have someone I love who has COVID-19, or at least I'm this, that, and the other. It doesn't help. She explains that does not build empathy in ourselves. That in fact, what builds empathy is allowing ourselves to grieve and have those feelings of sadness, which helps us to be more empathetic towards other people. And Lord knows we need a lot of empathy right now. So I just hope that you won't disregard your own feelings of grief or the feelings of grief that anybody else has in your life right now, as we continue to just get news that's so disappointing and hard as we continue to navigate this landscape. Around the subject of grief and some of the things that are pretty complicated emotionally in this whole landscape, there's a couple things that I've started to identify in my own situation. One is that lots of my coping mechanisms for dealing with my own grief or sadness or bad mood or whatever are not available to me right now. And so it's this double whammy of lots of feelings of frustration and sadness and fear and irritation and grief and all of those things. And like my bag of tricks has been diminished by half. You know, my toolbox for how I deal with those feelings isn't necessarily available to me. You know, I used to meet up with friends. I would go out to dinner with someone. I would, there were so many things that I could do. And the things that we do have that we can do for ourselves in our own house, I don't know about you, but they're getting old. I mean, going for a walk used to be a great way for me to take care of myself, but I am like, there's only so many times I can just visit the same 6 streets over and over and over again, you know? So it's super hard to figure out how to take care of yourself in a new way while you're in the midst of a situation where you need to take such good care of yourself. Does that make sense? I just think it's really hard. And the other thing that makes this hard is that we're all experiencing some amount of this at one time, right? So typically when I'm dealing with something that's really difficult, I can call up my friends and my family and they're not going through something maybe that's as hard as whatever I'm going through. But right now we're all in this together. And so even though in some ways that makes it easier for us to connect with one another, in other ways it's like we're all feeling a little empty. So it's hard. It's hard to ask. It's hard to call a friend up and say, I'm having a tough time, can you help me? Because your friend might feel like, I'm having a tough time too. It's almost like we need a system where if you're having a good day or a good hour, because a day is a pretty high expectation for yourself, but if you're having a good hour, it's like you should send out a little text to your people like, I'm having a good hour. Like, who needs to talk? Because it's like we have to rely on that flow of energy between all of us. Like if you're having one of those times and you can show up for somebody else, then we have to rely on each other that way. But I just want to acknowledge it. It's really hard. A couple of weeks ago, I think before one of our Compline sessions, I was just talking about how I have to keep kind of lowering my expectations for myself. And I think that is one of those ways we have to lower our expectations if like around our own care of self and around how we kind of connect with God, because again, some of those ways that we've been doing it just might not be available to us. So I want to tell you a story quickly about a super profound experience I had one time with a napkin. I know, it's riveting stuff. I preached about this one time. Some of my folks at Beloved have heard this. But I was in a Starbucks one time, and I got my coffee and I went over to can't you just close your eyes and remember what it feels like to walk into a Starbucks and get your coffee and stand at the counter with the cream and the sugar? And so I was doctoring my coffee, and I put the sugar in the coffee, and then I needed to throw the sugar packets away, and I couldn't find the trash can. And I was like looking everywhere for the trash can, and while I was looking for the trash can, something happened where it jostled the coffee and I had hot coffee spill on my hands. So I needed a napkin. And there was actually a napkin right on the countertop where I was standing. But I started to go crazy because I just really wanted to throw away the stuff that was in my hand before I solved the fact that I had hot coffee on my other hand with a napkin. I know it's so riveting, this story. So here's what happened. I was like getting so frustrated, trash in one hand, hot coffee on the other hand, couldn't find the trash can, and finally decided that I needed to give up on finding the trash can and take care of myself, take care of the hot coffee on my hand. And so I dropped the trash on the counter and I picked up the napkin to take care of the hot coffee on my hand. So listen, the trash can was underneath the napkin, right? Because at Starbucks, I don't know why I didn't realize it at the time. They just like carve a hole into the countertop there, and the trash can is underneath, right? So here I was desperately trying to find the trash can, but what I really needed next was to pick up this spill of hot coffee on my hands. And I kept trying to find the thing that I wanted next, but the thing that I needed was the napkin. And as soon as I picked up the napkin and saw the trash, I realized that by getting the very next thing I needed, that then the other thing fell into place. You guys, I know it sounds like the dumbest thing in the whole world, but it was like, first of all, years ago, and I still remember enough to tell you this story about standing at the drink counter at Starbucks, but it just hit me so hard that so often I decide what the next thing I need is, but it's like some arbitrary decision that I've made for myself instead of doing the very next thing I need to do to take care of myself. And so listen, I've talked to you a little bit about letting God just give you the very next thing, but I think that even that expectation needs to be simplified right now. that like when you are feeling a wave of grief, or you're feeling trapped in your house, or you're feeling lonely, or like whatever the thing is, try not to make the solution to that thing too complicated. Like try to keep it really, really simple, and just like let God put that next thing in front of you, you know? And I think my very favorite prayer is just what's next, which I stole from Jed Bartlett on the West Wing. What's next? Like when I'm absolutely at my wit's end and I cannot figure out the next thing to do, what's next? And I'm here to tell you, I get the next thing when I'm feeling that desperate. Like the next thing happens. And the same has been true for this experience. I was walking the same old walk that I walk every day yesterday, and I was having one of the days, you know, the bad days. There's like the days that are okay, and then there's the bad days. And I was having one of the bad days yesterday, and I just felt overwhelmed. And even though I was doing my walk, which is the thing I do for myself, it didn't make me feel any better. And Joanne started texting me, and I just called her instead of continuing to text her, because texting and walking is hard. And we just talked for 20 minutes, and she wasn't somebody that I thought to reach out to, because frankly, we had already touched base 10 times yesterday, as you all know if you read the post I wrote yesterday. But that conversation with her, it helped me. I couldn't figure out what to do with the chicken thighs in my fridge. And she said, cook the chicken. Guys, it's basic right now. It's like basic. The things that spin us are basic, and the solutions to the spin can be equally as basic. So anyway, I know this is a lot, but I wanted to say that it's okay to be sad, that it's hard to be sad because we don't have some of the coping mechanisms we've always had. And we're all feeling this way at once, but I have to believe that we have what it takes to take care of one another. And I absolutely believe that God has what it takes to take care of us. And so I hope that you will maybe employ this prayer I use, this what's next prayer. And if you've just found out that the school year is canceled, and maybe you feel some relief about that too, but also just tremendous sadness, and you're thinking through the disappointment, I just hope that you let yourself kind of sink into that. And then when you know it's time to take care of yourself, to just figure out that what's next, and trust that God's going to give you the napkin or whatever the next thing is to get you through. And I just, I know we can do it. I know that didn't sound real confident, but I know we'll be okay. But I don't think what's going to make us okay is trying to pretend that we're okay. I think that what's going to make it okay is just acknowledging the things that are hard and tending to one another and asking God for help. And that's how we're going to get to okay in all of this. So that's it. I will stop talking at you, but I don't know. I wanted to check in and say hi and say I'm thinking about you, and say especially to all of the young people that are in school in my life, and especially those of you who are finishing up a last year at a school, or your senior years in high school and college, that I'm sorry that this is where we are right now. So take care of yourselves today, friends. Love you.